Alan Smith. Good evening. A Conservative cabinet minister has been accused of a cover-up after denying knowledge about the role of one of his staff in the collapse of a rape trial when endorsing him as a candidate for the Welsh Assembly. Another cabinet minister, Jacob Rees-Mogg, has apologised for comments he made on a radio programme suggesting that people inside Grenfell Tower had not used common sense when following fire brigade advice to stay where they were rather than escape. The Liberal Democrats have launched their election campaign with the leader Jo Swinson urging people to vote for her party to stop Brexit and to build a brighter future. Jean-Claude Juncker, the outgoing president of the European Commission, has said that Labour's election promise to renegotiate the Brexit withdrawal agreement is unrealistic. The RMT union has announced a series of strikes on South Western Railway, threatening services on every day in December except the 1st and the 12th. Bristol City Council has approved plans for a clean air zone, which would be the first in the UK to ban diesel cars altogether. The proposals need government approval before they can proceed. The Welsh Secretary Alan Cairns has been accused of a cover-up after saying he didn't know a candidate for the Assembly in Cardiff, who he'd endorsed, had been accused of sabotaging a rape trial. The BBC has learnt that Mr Cairns was sent an email about the issue in August last year, several months before he gave his support to his former aide to run in 2021. Mr Cairns has insisted he was only told in October of this year. Labour have called on him to resign. Our Wales correspondent Hull Griffith reports.
In April last year, a rape trial at Cardiff Crown Court collapsed after one of the witnesses made claims about the victim's sexual history. In his evidence, Ross England, a former aide to the Welsh Secretary Alan Cairns, was asked if he'd worked with the complainant. He answered by saying that they had been in a casual sexual relationship. The judge was enraged, saying that the evidence was inadmissible. He accused Mr England, who was a friend of the man accused of rape, of deliberately trying to sabotage the trial. He told him to get out of my court. A retrial found the defendant guilty. Ross England has always denied any wrongdoing and went on to be chosen as a Conservative candidate for the 2021 Welsh Assembly elections. He was endorsed by Alan Cairns, who described him as a friend and a colleague with whom it would be a pleasure to campaign. Mr Cairns has always insisted that he wasn't made aware of the details of why the trial collapsed until last month. But the BBC has seen an email sent by his special advisor, which appears to show the issue was raised with him in August 2018. The email said, "I have spoken to Ross and he is confident no action will be taken by the court." That has led to accusations of a cover-up. Christina Rees is the Shadow Welsh Secretary.
I think this is a very serious situation, and I'm sure that more facts will emerge as time goes on. But I think that it's time for Alan Cairns to look at his position and to think about whether he should step down now for the sake of the country and for the sake of his party, because certain matters have emerged so far which make his position untenable.
Alan Cairns hasn't responded to the allegations. The Welsh Conservatives say that the leaked email was part of an informal conversation that doesn't reveal any new information. But the victim at the centre of the case has today told the BBC she feels she's owed an apology. She has joined calls for the Welsh Secretary to resign.
The leader of the House of Commons, Jacob Rees-Mogg, has apologised after he appeared to suggest that victims of the Grenfell Tower disaster did not use common sense when they followed the advice of fire officers to stay put in the burning block. In an interview on LBC Radio yesterday, Mr Rees-Mogg claimed that he would have left the tower block whatever the fire brigade said. A group representing survivors and relatives of those killed at Grenfell said the comments were beyond disrespectful. Here's our political correspondent Tom Simons.
The conclusion of the Grenfell Tower report was clear. If the advice that residents should stay put had been abandoned early in the disaster, fewer people would have died. Jacob Rees-Mogg told the LBC presenter Nick Ferrari he'd read about the report.
If you just ignore what you're told and leave, you are so much safer. If either of us were in a fire, whatever the fire brigade said, we would leave the burning building. It just seems the common sense thing to do.
It wasn't clear whether this was his view following the report's findings or whether he was making a comment about what would have been common sense for those caught up in the fire that night. He did say he didn't think the class or race of the Grenfell residents was relevant. But in the last 24 hours, the criticism of the Leader of the House has grown. Labour said his comments were appalling. On Twitter, the rapper Stormzy, with more than 1 million followers, bitterly attacked him. And this was the response from Karim Masili, who lost his uncle in the fire.
For him to go on public radio and make such disrespectful and inappropriate comments about our loved ones, he basically called them stupid, said that our loved one lacked common sense, and had they have used their common sense, they'd still be alive today.
As questions were shouted as he left a cabinet meeting,
Mr Rees-Mogg, do you really think Grenfell residents lack common sense?
No, that's not what I said.
Mr Rees-Mogg's office released what was described as a profound apology. He insisted he'd meant to say he would have listened to the stay-put advice at the time of the fire, but with hindsight he wouldn't have stayed and didn't think anyone else would. He said, "I would hate to upset the people of Grenfell if I was unclear in my comments." But those comments could have a real political impact. Kensington, the constituency which includes Grenfell Tower, was won by Labour in 2017 by just 20 votes from the Conservatives.
The Liberal Democrats have launched their general election campaign, promising to stop Brexit and build a brighter future for the UK. Addressing supporters in London, the party's leader Jo Swinson said that abandoning Brexit would deliver a Remain bonus worth £50 billion over 5 years for public services. She also ruled out joining a coalition with either Labour or the Conservatives in the event of a hung parliament. Our chief political correspondent Vicky Young reports.
The Liberal Democrats won just 12 seats at the last general election, but today Jo Swinson urged her party to be ambitious, saying it was a moment for seismic change and she was a candidate to be Prime Minister. Asked whether this was credible, she said, "Stranger things have happened." The Lib Dem leader said if her party did win power, it would cancel Brexit altogether. If not, it would support another referendum.
We're the only party standing up to say that we will stop Brexit and build a brighter future. And everybody knows Brexit has taken longer and cost more than anyone said that it would. But any type of Brexit will damage our economy, will cost jobs and starve our public services of the resources that they need.
In Scotland, though, the Lib Dems will be vying with the SNP to attract Remain voters, and they're in negotiations with the Greens and Plaid Cymru about electoral pacts in certain constituencies. Asked whether she could support a Labour government if there's a hung parliament, Ms Swinson said she categorically ruled out Lib Dem votes putting Jeremy Corbyn in number 10. She's also rejected a coalition with Boris Johnson. The challenge for Liberal Democrats in this election will be to convince people that a vote for them will make a difference. And their strategy of focusing on Brexit relies on voters considering that the most important issue.
The outgoing